All right, man, we're still in Luke chapter 7. That's where we're going to be. And so we're just following, and I've mentioned to you every week, we're looking at what we call encounters with Jesus. So we did a flyover of the Sermon on the Mount. We didn't look at that. We're just looking at these mostly one-on-one encounters. There's a few that there'll be multiple encounters, but for the most part, we're just trying to look at those one-on-one encounters so that we can really encounter Jesus through them. I read a series of books years ago by a man named, his last name was Geyer, G-I-R-E. I think he was on staff with Charles Swindoll, but he wrote these incredible books that opened up my eyes about the gospel the way he wrote freely, much like The Chosen has taken to do. He took some liberty and license with it, but they were powerful devotions. And so, so I just love these encounters. I love what's taking place. So last week we looked at the centurion. You remember? He was. I almost put these messages together and called it "Marveled and Moved," because that's what we're going to see. Last week, he marveled at the faith of the centurion, and this week he's going to be moved with compassion. And so we're going to see two stories that I believe are in great juxtaposition of each other that helps us connect some dots here and there. And so we're going to do that. But you remember last week, it was a centurion that made Jesus go, my, right? And I think how powerful that is, because he's looking now. We know a lot about this centurion, right? We know that he was a friend of the Jews, that he actually paid for the synagogue, that he had Jewish friends, that he actually cared for his slave, didn't just treat them like they were cattle or anything, and so there was some goodness in him, and so we know also of his great faith. And this is what we found, and this was what we looked at last week. And so God is amazed. He said, I am amazed at a man with such faith. And so this is a powerful thing. He wasn't amazed at the works of this centurion, though the centurion did some really great works, right? It wasn't that amazed him. It was his faith. And so this week, we're looking at the fact that a widow woman moved the heart of God. And so it's a story in contrast, because one had rank, right? The centurion had great rank, and this lady's life is in ruins, and I'll explain that in a minute. But so one had great rank in society, and one was in great situation of ruin. One was respected. The centurion was respected. A widow, that's kind of a rejected situation there. And then one was at the top of society, and one finds themselves at the bottom. But both of them, and this is what's important, both of them capture the heart of God. This is what I want us to see, that Jesus is captivated by his creation. And I don't think we marvel at that enough, that he, according to Zephaniah, sings over us songs, right? That every morning he lays new mercies at our feet, that this is who he is, and that his eyes are always moving to and fro about the earth, that he may find those hearts who's fully his. And so we see this kind of displayed. And so Luke is the only one that records this section. Last week there were a couple of, Matthew recorded some of this, and so did Luke. This week is simply Luke's the only one who gives us his story. And it says this in verse 11. It says, soon afterward, Jesus went to a city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. So here we are. Jesus is up in the coastal town of Capernaum. It's kind of his second home, right? He got kicked out of Nazareth, so he makes his way over to the Sea of Galilee, because every great individual wants to be by the water, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it is. So just kidding. But so he's over there on that coastal town, and he's created quite a stir and quite a following. It was there that he healed the one who was the roof was opened up and they dropped down. It was there that the fish incident happened, where Peter and them caught more fish than they knew what to do with. It was there that the leper was healed. This town is seeing a great amount of work, and that's kind of Jesus' home base right now. And so it says soon afterward, Jesus went to a city called Nain. And so I just want to kind of help us see where that is. So they're in the upper west side of the Sea of Galilee, and they're about 25 miles from this little town called Nain, which really means pleasant. are plush gardens, right? And so really, it's just the city of Pleasant. It's like Pleasantville, right? But it's a very small town. And so this is where we find ourselves. And so now his disciples. Remember, he appointed the disciples there in Capernaum also. That was where he had the Sermon on the Mount. All of that's right there together. And so he's now appointed the 12 disciples, and all of the crowd is now following him everywhere he goes. And because they've just seen some great things that he's done. And so this crowds are swelling in rank. Not to mention that when he stands on that hillside up just north of Capernaum, that he starts out telling all the people who felt like they were outcast according to the Pharisees that no, you truly are the ones who are full of Makarios. You are the blessed ones, right? And so we remember the Beatitudes. Remember what he said there. So that's only endeared them to him. The Pharisees aren't giving them that hope, right? Who wants to go to a church where all they're doing is getting beat up all the time, right? And told they're worthless and they're full of garbage and they're no good to anybody, right? And somebody running around with a little, citizen's arrest thing ready to catch you at something wrong. Who wants to go to that place, right? But that was their only option until Jesus comes along. And now you've got a man who's going, hey, listen, you're blessed. And then he will at some point go, hey, listen, do everything the Pharisees tell you to do, but don't be like them, right? He doesn't mind calling out the religious that are doing wrong. And so they're drawn to that. Just know that, because there's going to be a battle that's going to take place later on that we need to know that. So he's got this huge entourage. Now, he must have gotten up sometime early that morning. It's probably a half a day, maybe a good full day journey, 25 miles. So they head out and there's a slight climb out of that valley, and then they come to Tiberias, which is a Roman city, and then they would make their turn, kind of heading southwest toward Nazareth. They would come to Magdala, which is where Mary Magdalene was from, and so it was a pretty powerful fishing village. So they're kind of hugging the coastline. That would be the normal trade route, and so they're going there, and then they come through Cana, where the wedding feast was, in Nazareth, which is kind of near that. And then as they get closer to where they're going here in Pleasantville, we're going to call it, it's the city of Nain, they would have looked up and they would have seen Mount Tabor. Now, I don't know if you remember Mount Tabor or not, but it was famous and will be soon famous for two things. One, right now, it was where Deborah and Barak had their great victory, right? And that was when, he was like, I'll only go if you go with me. Remember when he did that whole thing? And so it was on that hillside that great victory took place. So all of the Jews in the land knew, hey, that they're still wanting to celebrate their great victories, right? I mean, that's kind of what they do. And so they're saying, hey, that was where we did there, right? And then it's also, most historians say, is a place of the transfiguration, which has yet to happen, but will soon happen. And so they make their way into this city. And I love everything about it. It's a small, obscure little town, green pastures or gardens, if you will. And so, but it's a tiny place. Most people say there were maybe only a few houses in this place. And so what I love about this is the timing of Jesus. It's important that we see that. I just think sometimes we lose sight of that. I know we don't. Those who like to push against what some would call the sovereignty of God. Where everything's played out. That timing does matter, right? And so it's a big deal, right? Remember when he said, "I must go through Samaria." Remember when he did that, and he did that for one reason, and he wanted to be there at a specific time. That's why he traveled, because there was an appointment he had divinely by God to sit at that well of Jacob and listen to a woman who had some misery in her life. It's the same thing when word comes that his close friend Lazarus is sick and almost dying. And the writer tells us, now Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Therefore, he stayed away. Because timing is everything to him. They wouldn't have learned the lesson had Lazarus not died and stinketh much. So he waited until that time. I just think it's important to do that. And I think sometimes we need to know that, right? I mean, he's always on time. He's sometimes it's like, you can get a little early just to make me feel better. But he's never late, and rarely is he going to be early, but he's always on time. Even when we think he's late. Right? How many times have you thought God was late in your life, right? and or that he didn't perform like we want him to perform. Let's just be honest here. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on. So every city, even the small ones, have a city gate. The city gate is kind of like the town square. It's where the elders of the place go and they hang out, and people come and they'll ask the elders for some advice, settle disputes. It's that kind of a place. And so the city gates is kind of that thing. And so here's two crowds that are gathering together. We're going to read this when we get to verse 12. He says this: "Now as he approached the gate of the city, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a sizable crowd from the city was with her." So, sizable crowd would have to be probably the whole city. And so you've got two crowds converging on the same spot, trying to get through the gate of this town. And so you've got Jesus' crowd, and they've been walking a day's journey, however long that took, because if there were little kids in the trip and all of that, there's just this rubber band thing. You ever traveled, with trying to get your family to follow you, and all of a sudden you look back and they're like in my case, they're way back there, and I have to slow down and let them catch up, right? And there's that little rubber band approach. That's kind of what's going on here in these caravans. That's how come when they were doing that back in Jesus when he was younger, Mary just assumed that Jesus was with his brothers and sisters, and they were with cousins, and everything would be cool. And then she realizes a little further down, oh wait, we don't know where they are. And he was in the court, in the temple, right? So we know that kind of thing. I want you to picture this and see what's going on. And so you've got one crowd coming this way, and the leader is life, right? There follows life there, and then you've got this one. And you've got a woman who's leading death, right? So it's like the contrast is amazing to me. And so you have these processions going in. Now I'm assuming as they're getting near that gate, Jesus is hearing the flute that's always played at funerals, and they're the wailers and the weepers that take place. We know that they paid people to do that in those days. They still do that. I stumbled into a wedding in India. I mean, a funeral. Same thing. No, some people. I'm just joking. It's a joke. But some people. We stumbled onto a funeral, and man, it was crazy inside. It was a huge crowd. My friend Saji was like, yeah, they pay them to do that, and so here they would have heard that music. If you've ever seen the funerals down in Bourbon Street and all of that, it's kind of a party kind of a thing. It's this, but not the party, right? But lots of music. People are walking through. The dead person is on a beer, not one you drink, but a BEIR. It's like a stretcher. So they're either holding him here, they're holding him down here. His mom and all these mourners are going on. Lots of music are taking place. So you think that, and that's what's taking place. And so they're hearing all this music, and the timing is just right that as they get to this city gate, here's what goes on. And so let's read these two verses again. Soon afterward, Jesus went into a city called Nain. His disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. Now, as he approached the city gate, a dead man was being carried out. So we do see that timing thing. The only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a sizable crowd was with her. So this is the situation. So this is where, if you will allow me, hope meets heartbreak, right? I mean, that's kind of what's going on. I don't want to make too many cliches, but I think it's important that we see this. Now, this widow had no husband. She had lost him. So she's already in some strait. If you, so Tammy and I watched a movie the other day. It's a really good movie on the Angel Network about the Afghanistan robotic team. I don't know if you've seen that movie. I don't remember the name of it, but what was happening? They won like this great international event. These kids, and they were all girls on this team, and true story. And underneath different of the regimes of Afghanistan, if they're the real Sharia type law, girls don't go to school, So you're sixth grade. You're not in school, and so it's not any different than it was in Jesus' day. Women were treated that way, right? If you were a widow, you were in trouble. It was true in Elijah's day with the widow that he took care of. It was true of the widow who had just a little bit of money, and Jesus is watching. Remember when they're putting money in the treasury at the temple, and all she had was those two little widow mites. Like they're impoverished. That's why you have large families, because somebody's got to take care of you. And so this was what was going on, but she didn't have a husband. Now she didn't have a son. Now, what that means is there's no man in her life. So what this means is she has no legal protection. People can come and take whatever they want to of her. This guy's, yeah, if you're living there, that's mine, right? Well, where's she gonna go, right? She has no economic protection. They didn't have Social Security in those days. They didn't have any of that stuff. You didn't get your husband's inheritance. That was it. It was done, right? So this is what was going on. And she had no protection now, right? You got boys in the house. You got somebody who can protect you. I mean, I realize we live in an age when women can do the same thing, and some women are, bigger and badder than a lot of guys I know. But in those days, this is what it was. So she's got this emotional devastation going on. She's got financial ruin going on, and she's socially vulnerable. And so in this little town called Pleasant, right now it's filled with pain, right? I mean, that's kind of where we are, and that's what's going on. And so Jesus, though, comes to work. I believe with all my heart that he knew this was taking place. I don't think he goes, "Oh wow, what a coincidence." Not him. I think that he knew, because he only did what the Father told him. And I want us to know this. I just want to see that he's mindful of everything. He doesn't miss a thing, right? He told Nathanael, "I saw you when you were underneath the tree," right? So we know these things. He is the one who heals the leper, and everybody behind him was a witness to that. He's the one who raised 6 slaves to death. He's the one who calmed the storms. He's the one that caught the fish. He's the one that said, "I forgive the sins." Everybody behind him knew there was something different about him. And so all of this crowd is anticipating that God's going to do something here just like he's done everywhere else. This widow, though, is not expecting any of that. She doesn't say a word. I don't know if you read the text, but she doesn't say anything. But here's what it says. Verse 13. When the Lord saw her. I love that. I don't know if you know this or not, but it was Hagar when she was kicked out of Abraham's house because Sarah was jealous and said, "Just send them away," that they did. And she's out there abandoned because of a similar situation. She has no husband. She's got a young son. She's prey to any man, animal, whatever wants to come her way. And she's out there wondering what to do, and God speaks to her. And she names, the only place in Scripture we see a woman named any a character of God. In fact, anytime anybody's named the character, gave God a name. And she said, "You are the God who sees me." And so I want us to understand that, right? Sometimes I think we don't see that, but he's moved with compassion. Look what it says, when the Lord saw her. What is he? So we're clear on this. He doesn't look at the outside of that widow, right? I mean, we know he does, but what does he look at? The heart, right? So here he sees this woman broken, right? She's distraught. What am I going to do? My husband's gone. My only son's gone. She's almost going to sound like that widow of Elijah's day, where she said, "I'm just going to make some bread and we're going to die." Remember? You remember the story, right? That's exactly what she said. Because what's she going to do? She got no oil. She got no man to give it to her. She got nothing. She's got a son, so but a baby. And so this is just it. He knows her past. He knows her present. He knows her future. Same as he does you and me. He knows what she thinks. He knows what she feels. And he knows what she fears. I find this great encouraging because sometimes I don't even want to see that stuff in me, and I'm grateful that God does. Sometimes I'm the guy that goes, I got it, I'm all right. It's grateful for me to have a nudge from the guy to go, "Yeah, you're lying. Just admit, right?" I think it's important that we do that. You know what he always does too? Listen, the word compassion there is a word that means like gut-wrenching emotion. Like this is one of those things. Have you ever walked up on a sad thing and you feel it on the inside of you, right? Your car wreck or whatever, or you see somebody, in the throes of death, and there's this like, "Oh man, I just wish I could do something," right? That's what this is. I just want us to understand the God that we serve in the flesh, Jesus, had that kind of compassion. And here's what I began to research this week. He always starts with compassion, never correction, right? The woman caught in adultery. Does no one condemn you? No, neither do I. Just, hey, do me a favor. Don't sin anymore, right? To the woman at the well, he didn't first go, "Well, you're just a jerk. Here's what happened." No, he just was compassionate to her, right? It's the way he is all the way through. Compassion first, correction later. So we get to verse 14, and he says this. And he came up and touched the coffin. Now, that actually is the word bier, which is the word for a stretcher. So they've got a stretcher. He puts his hand on it, and because it's touching a dead person, he literally did violate that whole thing about not touching that which was dead, right? But he's God, and he ain't going to be dead for long, and so it won't matter. That's kind of the way it goes. And so he came up and touched the coffin, and the bears came to a halt because they're probably freaking out. He just touched this thing, right? And he said, young man, I say to you, get up. Sometimes what we think is over ain't over, right? I wonder, what is this woman thinking when he says, young man, like talking to him like he's alive. She knows she's right there because he sees her, and then he does this, and he says, arise. And the dead man sat up and began to speak. Again, that tells us what he said. I'd like to know what Lazarus was thinking too. I'm like, hey, man, I was kind of really enjoying where I was, you know. But whatever happened, here's what it says. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. And fear gripped them all. And they began glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has appeared. Right? And so this is just powerful. A great prophet has appeared among us. I got to believe they're thinking about this. That's, I think, one of the reasons why they think, is this Elijah? Is he Elijah? Is he calling when he's on the cross and all these other places? And they ask him, who do men say that I am? Some say you're this, and some say you're that. Because he's doing these people would have known all about Elijah and him sparing the widow lady and bringing her son back to death. Because this is Jesus proving that he's greater than all the other prophets. So in some sense, it's just it's a story fit for this kind of thing. Then it says this, a great prophet has appeared among us, and God has visited his people. Now, that's a phrase that comes straight from Isaiah, right? God with us, Emmanuel. This is what they're saying. They're saying, God surely is with us. And so there's no... Listen, Nain knows, and now all of Capernaum that came with him and converged in that gate all know that he is the Messiah. Not because he says so, but because they've seen the works of who he is. And so that's the story of what's going on. And it says this, and this report about him spread throughout Judea and in all the surrounding region. These will be the reasons why the Pharisees are going to get so upset. Because he's just doing what he does. He's just being God. He's doing the things he does. It wasn't just a son that was raised. It was the future recovered, right? Because she didn't have any future, and he gave it back to her. And he rescued and gave her hope back too, right? Now she's got hope again in that sense. God doesn't only work when we're strong, but when we're not. Nothing's mentioned about her faith. Nothing there says that she was anticipating that he would show up and come through the gate. This isn't the centurion who's like, man, if I could. This isn't Jairus, the ruler who said, hey, my daughter, right? That he knew that if he could get his daughter or Jesus to his daughter, she would be whole. She's at the end of the road. She's a few steps from putting him in a grave. Isn't that right? Compassion shows up. I think we're always quitting too soon on God. This is a message for me. Like it may feel like something's dead, maybe a dream, maybe a future. You know, as we're looking through another season of life and going part-time, I'm thinking, man, do I still have enough game to get out there and do some ministry thing that I want to? I kind of feel like I'm like Caleb. I'm as strong today as I was the day I started. But at the same time, you go, man, is that window past? Is the Lord going to let that happen? Is he not going to let that happen? And this story reminds me that it doesn't matter about any of that. I could be at the end of my road, and God's going to meet me there. And he's going to lead me where he needs to go. I'm greatly encouraged by this. God raises more than the dead. And I know some of that's fresh on some of us, right? Because we've lost loved ones in the year, and we're like, well, why didn't God do that for us? So, but He is in this business, um, spiritually and mentally. We're seeing those things take place too. He does that. I can't answer why He does and doesn't do it with everybody, but I do know He's able, and He has His reasons, and He has His purpose. And so we, like the three Hebrew children who know that He could deliver them from the fire, says our God will deliver us. But even if He doesn't, we're not bowing down. We're just going to trust Him. So this is where we are, right? Don't mistake the silence of God for the absence of God. God is there in the middle of all this mess. Even if we don't see Him doing the things that we want Him to. And I think we should not be so fast to bury what God may want to raise. I think too many people quit on their marriages and they quit on other things, and it's like, hey, let's give God an opportunity to work there. That's the message I got for us today. I think a new song for here, which is similar to the one we just finished. I think you're gonna like it.